Jamaica is not independent, as the definition of independent is free from outside control, not subject to another's authority, not depending on another for livelihood or subsistence, capable of thinking or acting for oneself, not connected with another or with each other, separate. Now, I was watching a documentary called Miners Shot Down. It's the story of the 2012 massacre of about 28 miners employed to the Lonkin Maracana mines that's in South Africa. The plot is simply this: miners were unsatisfied with pay. Employers do not hold miners' grievances seriously. Miners strike. Employers call the police. Police enforce the authority. Miners were shot. The aftermath: an inquiry was held and none of the police was found guilty of any wrongdoing, after it was stated by the police that their actions were in self-defense as the mob had weapons. Two of the leaders of the group are serving sentences for crimes against the state. So I said to myself, could this be Jamaica? And in fact, in many ways, circumstances and the situations, this is just like Jamaica. Welcome back to Elite Jamaica, the place you come to learn about Jamaica and Jamaicans. If it's your first time joining me here, consider subscribing to the channel by clicking that red subscribe button, and remember to turn on notifications by clicking that bell icon so you never miss any of my updates. Remember the Green Bay Massacre in 1978 in Jamaica? This was what happened. 5 men were lured by the Jamaica Defense Force in January 1978 to an apparent promise of a job waiting for them to fill. These men were from the opposing political party, the JLP. The operation entailed the luring of the men into an ambush at the Green Bay firing range by members of the Military Intelligence Unit, a covert operational wing of the Jamaica Defense Force. The men were shot dead, and an inquiry was held to investigate. The aftermath: the official report released by the military was that the men were shot dead after they were surprised by soldiers doing target practice on the JDF firing range. The PNP has always disavowed knowledge of the covert action that took the lives of the men, and said it was purely a military operation that was later justified, and no one was charged. Remember the Kingston unrest in 2010, dubbed locally as the Tivoli Incursion? This was an armed conflict between the shower posse and the security forces in Kingston. This is what happened. The US government was adamant that Christopher Dudus Coke was to be taken into custody and sent to the US for trial. The people who favored Dudus were not having it. The shootout between the security forces and the people of Tivoli resulted in 73 dead and 35 others wounded. 4 soldiers were also killed and over 500 persons arrested. The aftermath: a vote of no confidence against the Prime Minister was held and failed as politicians voted against party lines. Dudus Coke was eventually extradited to the US. No one was accountable for the mismanagement of the situation. The ruling JLP lost the election that followed. Ever heard of Bad Friday, or the Coral Gardens Massacre, or the Rastafarian Massacre? That's in 1963. On Holy Thursday, 1963, 6 bearded men without locks burnt down a gas station in Coral Gardens. The act was to protest the unjust lockup of one bearded man after a land deal with a non-bearded man went sour. The men, assumed to be Rastafarians, were said to be armed with machetes and other weapons. 2 police officers and 6 civilians, including 3 of the assailants, died. The then Prime Minister, Sir Alexander Bustamante, instructed the army and the police to round up all Rastafarians from the parishes of St. James, Hanover, and Trelawney. The excess prisoners who could not fit in the prisons were to be disposed of by killing and taking them to Bogue Hill, above a major cemetery in Montego Bay. This led to a collective crucifixion of many innocent followers of the Rastafarian faith and the suppression of the movement island-wide. The massacre is known as Bad Friday. The aftermath: over 54 Rastafarians were killed and another 30 injured. No inquiry was held at the time in 1963, and no one was held accountable.
It really was the Bustamante government's first clash with the Rastafari.
And Mr. Bustamante said, carrying all Rastaman, dead or alive. Bringing all Rasta, dead or alive. What book can hold, Bogue Hill will hold them.
Don't you see a pattern here? In every conflict, the situation was grossly mismanaged, both resources and victims. Victims here being the people afflicted, as well as total disregard for common sense and restraint, especially when in every scenario the people abused were the citizens of the country, not a foreigner, not a terrorist, but their own citizens. Fundamental rights and freedoms as stated in the Jamaican Constitution Order in Council 1962, Chapter 3 was completely thrown out the door. Because whereas every person in Jamaica is entitled to the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual, that is to say, as the right wherever his race, place of origin, political opinion, color, creed or sex. To each and all the following: life, liberty, security of the person, the enjoyment of property and the protection of the law. Freedom of conscience, of expression, and of peaceful assembly and association. In none of the cases were those rights secured and established in all four theaters. No one was afforded the right to life, liberty, and security. And even if there were persons that were allegedly in conflict with the law, the person so alleged has the right to be granted due diligence and his time to be heard in court. Management was at best strong-handed, and at worst the symbol of human genocide. A part of management is doing things right, and part of doing the right thing is to know the objective of the mission at hand. The objective in each case was to allow every orchestral part of the theater to communicate and work together, creating a symphony of measured justice. Justice for the people they swore to protect and serve. Conducting the orchestra in temper and arrogance, especially during the rehearsals, is like driving a car without tires. All you get is a haunting noise and a useless car. Now these are some quotes from the actors in these scenes. South African police chief quoted, "We want to end this illegal activity. It's not illegal for persons to strike when not getting paid." The Minister of National Security back then, Dudley Thompson, in the Green Bay Massacre, he stated, "No angels died at Green Bay." Wow. The Prime Minister of Jamaica in the Tivoli Incursion stated, "I'm taken aback by the violence," when it was the army bringing the violence. Alexander Bustamante, Prime Minister of Jamaica 1963, he stated, "Hunt them down, and who you can't find, dig hole a bog." Now these quotes from the stated actors bothered me. Conflicts are not unusual. It is part of the human DNA. There will always be conflicts. In this case, miners sold their expertise to their employers and felt their labor was not adequately compensated. 5 men of different political views from the ruling PNP. The people of Tivoli held Dudus as their communal leader, and the Rastafarians grew their hair unlike others in 1963. This is the human liberty the Constitution talks about, the right to express yourself lawfully and live freely within the law. Management not recognizing these liberties forced the players to communicate the way they felt will get management's attention. One theater stopped working, the other rioted, the other defended their declared leader, and one paraded to defend their culture. What is illegal about expressing their rights peacefully? No angels died at Green Bay, Mr. Thompson, but no justice was present at Green Bay either. Disputes demand the greatest effort to listen and equal the greatest effort to compromise, and if there is no desire on both sides to communicate, then both parties have just struck the match. Management's refusal to take the noise of the people seriously is suicidal. Eventually, someone will pull the trigger. This is not illegal, Madam Chief of Police. And yes, no angels were present, Mr. Thompson, but frankly, the people were virtuous in the face of the oppression. They were innocent. They were just. Their actions were self-defense. The art of modern management in this globalized world is constantly changing. The changing dynamics require management to not only be a leader, but must now also be a muse of creativity. Management now has to be someone who has such an influence on their people that they become an inspiration for the creative work of the nation. The incidents leading to the days of the 5 massacres saw a continuing decline in respect for not the workers, but a declining respect for humanity. In each case, it was us and them. Power, them the people who are supposed to acquiesce to power. Us the rich, them the poor. Us the educated, them the uneducated. 2 opposing poles electrically charged, creating the perfect storm. The ensuing struggle in the theater between the parties resulted in the deaths, with all parties justifying the results. It is always the best tool for management to protect and avoid the floating clouds of rain and lightning to avoid the onslaught of a downpour of anarchy. It is not good for business. It is not good for trust. Trust abandons faith. The police has nothing to apologize for. That's what the police chief said. And the police chief, was Bustamante at the time. This audio statement made by these actors do not help management. It transformed them into the mummy they so vividly played in this horrific tragedy. The message communicated by all 5 leaders is, the death of the people leave the police and management cold. Given the social and economic circumstances of the world, management still do not get it. The lack of management's capacity to deal with what their people feel is graphically showing why the people have social protests with regards to the state of governance, levels of corruption and lack of service delivery. There is a total disconnect. Wages low, unemployment high. People live in almost abominable conditions, and the so-called servants of the people, they only masquerade as bigots, and this literally raises the question, is management, government or the police really concerned about the people they serve? Is management serially inept? There are only 2 types of music, good music and bad music. In life, there is only one tragedy, a bad tragedy. In a country like ours, when the tragedy hits the rarefied air, the stench pervades for miles. As the stench raises, the people are the ones that are seen as the villain, and management, leaders and government collectively hypnotize the Gentiles that their actions are fair, just and for the good of all. The Prime Minister Bustamante at the time declared, "Hunt them down, and who you can't find, dig hole above." My one question to the Prime Minister would have been, if those words are not threatening words of destruction to your own people, then what is? At the time in Jamaica where independence meant freedom from the colloquial lifestyle, freedom from the European definition of our blackness, if those words were not racist in thought and deed, then what is? Although Jamaica was independent, management still held on to the ideals of the Europeans, and on the other side of the stage, the Africans, by the way he looked and felt about himself, were still enslaved. The ensuing tension between the Rastafarians and the new established elites of Jamaica was like a volcanic mountain ready to explode. One party in the theater declaring he is independent but technically still colonized, the other declaring his life is black and he still lives his reality. 2 polarizing views. The Rastafarians were experiencing their own reality. Management were living someone else's reality. The first responsibility of a leader is to define reality. The last responsibility is to say thank you. In between, the leader is a servant. And that's a quote from Max Dupree. Management got it wrong. In this case, it can be argued that Jamaica in 1962 was without moral and intellectual independence, creating no anchor for national independence. No country should kill its people like dogs at the wailing wall of suffering, no matter how threatening the situation. Leaders cannot lose faith in their people's humanity. Gandhi said if a bottle of dirty water gets dropped in the ocean, it does not mean the ocean is dirty. Management must know their people, speak to them as people, do not miscalculate and treat them like the enemy. In all the scenes of this horrific stage, the police fired on the people and the people acted in self-defense. Intelligently, they all fell to the ground with their hands in the air. Who amongst the players were the most intelligent? Who was it that raped them of justice? There is a higher court than courts of justice, and that is the court of conscience. It supersedes all courts, and that's from Mahatma Gandhi. Thank you again for joining me. I am Alex. Bless.